a pregnant wife, a billionaire husband, and a demand that shattered a perfect life. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a saga of public humiliation and spectacular revenge. What happens when a man with everything to lose forces his expectant wife to apologize to his mistress? He learns that hell hath no fury. Like a woman scorned, armed with a team of relentless lawyers and the full attention of court TV. By the time the sun rose on his empire, the world knew his name, his face, and every single one of his secrets. Stick around to hear how one woman's deepest shame became her greatest weapon. Katie Vanderbilt lived a life most people only saw in magazines. Her home, a sprawling minimalist mansion overlooking the Pacific in Malibu, was less a house and more a statement. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls drank in the California sun, reflecting off the white marble floors and the infinity pool that seemed to spill directly into the ocean. Her husband, Adrian Vanderbilt, a name that dripped with old money prestige and new money ruthlessness, was the architect of this life. He wasn't just wealthy. He was a titan of industry, a private equity king who could make or break companies with a single phone call. To the outside world, they were the golden couple. Katie, with her classical beauty and a grace that seemed out of place in the modern world, was the perfect counterpart to Adrian's sharp, commanding presence. She was the warm, beating heart to his cold, calculating mind. And now, at 29, she was 6 months pregnant with their first child, a son destined to inherit an empire. The baby was meant to be the final, perfect piece of their meticulously curated life. But a gilded cage, no matter how beautiful, is still a cage. The first cracks in the facade were almost invisible, as fine as a hairline fracture in a diamond. It started with Adrian's phone, a second phone he claimed for international business. It was a sleek black burner he kept locked in his study, a room Katie was tacitly forbidden from entering. Then there were the late nights blamed on deals closing in Hong Kong or London time zones becoming a convenient shield. He would return home in the early hours of the morning, smelling not of the stale air of a corporate jet, but of a faint, unfamiliar perfume. Something floral and audacious, so unlike Katie's subtle signature scent. She tried to ignore the signs, burying her anxieties under a mountain of preparations for the baby. She designed the nursery with a renowned interior decorator, selecting hand-painted wallpaper from France and a crib carved from sustainable Nordic wood. She attended prenatal yoga classes in a sun-drenched studio surrounded by other wealthy wives-to-be, all of them smiling, all of them projecting an aura of blissful fulfillment. Katie smiled too, a carefully practiced expression that didn't quite reach her increasingly troubled eyes. Her friends, women who had known her since before Adrian noticed the change. "You seem distant, Izzy," said Maya, her closest confidant, over lunch at a ridiculously expensive vegan restaurant Adrian despised. "Is everything okay?" Katie picked at her quinoa salad. "Of course. Just tired. The baby, you know." It was the perfect excuse, the one no one could question. But Maya saw through it. "It's not the baby. It's him, isn't it? He was a thundercloud at the charity gala last week. He barely looked at you." Katie's fork clattered against her plate. "He was stressed, Maya. A big merger fell through." She was defending him. She realized, out of habit, out of a desperate need to believe the lie herself. The truth was the distance between them had become a chasm. The easy intimacy they once shared had evaporated, replaced by a tense, transactional dynamic. Their conversations were about schedules, public appearances, and the stock market. He would compliment her dress before they stepped onto a red carpet, not because he noticed her, but because her appearance was a reflection of him. He was a man who curated his life like a museum exhibit, and she was his most prized acquisition. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the illusion shattered completely. Adrian was supposedly in a board meeting downtown. Katie was sorting through a new delivery of baby clothes, tiny cashmere sweaters, and impossibly small shoes, when a courier arrived with a flat rectangular package addressed to Adrian. It wasn't from a corporate office. The return address was a trendy art gallery in the city. Curiosity, sharp and painful, gnawed at her. She told herself it was wrong, a violation of the trust that she was still pretending existed between them. But the seed of doubt once planted had taken root. Her hands trembled as she carefully sliced open the package. Inside was not a document, but a framed photograph. It was a professional shot, arty and intimate. Adrian was in it, but he wasn't alone. He was sitting on a plush velvet sofa, a glass of whiskey in one hand. His arm was wrapped possessively around the shoulders of a woman Katie had never seen before. She was stunning in a fierce, unconventional way. Sharp cheekbones, a cascade of dark, unruly hair, and eyes that blazed with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She was leaning into him, her head resting on his shoulder, a small, triumphant smile on her lips. They looked comfortable, familiar a unit. Beneath the photo, a small engraved plaque read, "Chloe and Adrian, celebrating us, 2025. The air left Katie's lungs in a single gut-wrenching gasp. The baby kicked a sharp, sudden movement, as if sensing his mother's distress. She sank onto the floor, the photograph clutched in her hand, the cold reality of the image burning through the carefully constructed fantasy of her life. He wasn't just having an affair, he was celebrating it. He had a whole other life, a whole other us, and she had been nothing more than the beautifully decorated, publicly acceptable cover story. The cage was no longer gilded. It was just a cold, empty prison. And she was trapped inside with his air growing within her. The hours that followed the discovery were a blur of cold, quiet fury. Katie didn't cry. Tears felt like a luxury. She couldn't afford a weakness she couldn't show even to herself. She placed the photograph back in its packaging, resealed it with surgical precision, and left it on the massive mahogany desk in Adrian's forbidden study. It was a silent declaration of war. She spent the rest of the afternoon in the nursery, the scent of fresh paint and new linen doing nothing to soothe the tempest in her soul. She ran her hands over the smooth, curved wood of the crib, a piece of furniture that now felt like a prop in a tragic play. This child, her child, was being born into a lie. The Vanderbilt legacy she was supposed to perpetuate was a hollow monument to deceit. The anger that had been simmering for months finally boiled over, solidifying into a hard, clear resolve. She would not be the silent, complicit wife. Not anymore. Adrian came home just after 9. He strode into the house with his usual air of ownership, loosening his tie as he called out her name. "Katie, I'm home." She emerged from the grand staircase, her posture ramrod straight, her face a mask of serene composure. She had changed into a simple cream-colored silk dress. She wanted him to see what he was throwing away. "You had a package delivered," she said, her voice even and calm, betraying none of the chaos inside her. "It's in your study." A flicker of something annoyance alarm crossed his face before being replaced by his usual impassive expression. "Thank you. Business." He turned to walk away, dismissing her. "From the Dubois Gallery," she added. He froze his back to her. He didn't turn around for a long moment. The silence stretched thick with unspoken accusations. When he finally faced her, his eyes were cold steel. "You opened my mail." It wasn't a question. It was an indictment. "I opened a package addressed to my husband in my home," she retorted, a spark of defiance flaring in her chest. The plaque was very touching, celebrating us. "Tell me, Adrian, who is us?" He walked slowly towards her, his movements deliberate, predatory. He stopped just inches from her, forcing her to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The faint floral scent of that other woman's perfume clung to his suit jacket. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Katie. You're being hysterical. It must be the pregnancy hormones." The condescension, the casual gaslighting was like a slap in the face. "Don't you dare," she hissed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do not use our child as an excuse for your infidelity." "Who is she?" He sighed, a long theatrical sound of exasperation, as if dealing with a petulant child. "Her name is Chloe Dubois. She's an artist, a friend. The photo was a gift for her recent gallery opening, which I helped fund. It's business a Katie Hippersamu. Something you wouldn't understand. A friend whose head is on your shoulder. A friend you have a commemorative plaque with." Katie laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed in the cavernous foyer. "How stupid do you think I am? I think you're emotional and overreacting," he said, his voice hardening. "Chloe is a business associate, a very important one. Her gallery is a major investment. Her connections are vital. You are making a scene over nothing." The confrontation escalated, their voices rising and falling in the sterile, soundproofed mansion. Katie, fueled by months of repressed suspicion, laid out all the evidence, the late nights, the secret phone, the lies. Adrian, trapped, fell back on his most potent weapons, intimidation and dismissal. He twisted her words, painted her as paranoid, and belittled her intelligence. Finally, he played his trump card. "Fine," he said, his voice dropping to a deceptively calm tone. "You want to meet her? You want to see for yourself how nothing this is? Then you'll get your chance. I'm hosting a dinner for her and some potential investors on Friday. Here." Katie was stunned into silence. He would bring his mistress into their home, into the home where she was building a nursery for their son. It was a power play of breathtaking cruelty. "You wouldn't dare," she breathed. "I would, and you will be there," he commanded. "You will be the gracious, supportive wife. You will smile, you will play your part, and you will put Chloe and her guests at ease. This deal is worth 9 figures, Katie. I will not have you jeopardizing it with your suburban paranoia." The days leading up to the dinner were the longest of Katie's life. She moved through her home like a ghost, the air thick with tension. Adrian acted as if their fight had never happened, discussing guest lists and menu options with their private chef, as if it were just another one of their soulless social obligations. Katie, trapped, had no choice but to go along with it. To refuse would be to cede the field entirely. She had to see this through. She had to meet the woman who had co-authored her husband's betrayal. Friday night arrived like a death sentence. Katie dressed with deliberate care, choosing a sapphire blue gown that highlighted her pregnancy, a visible symbol of her role, her claim. She stood beside Adrian at the door, a perfect smiling hostess as the guests arrived. And then she saw her. Chloe Dubois was even more striking in person. She wore a backless black dress, a stark contrast to Katie's vibrant blue. Her dark hair was piled high on her head, and her eyes, the same blazing eyes from the photograph, swept over the magnificent house with a look of cool appraisal. She wasn't just a guest. She was an assessor. Adrian greeted her with a warmth that was painfully, obviously different from how he treated anyone else. He placed a hand on the small of her back, a gesture of casual intimacy that made Katie's stomach clench. "Chloe, darling," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I'd like you to finally meet my wife, Katie." Chloe's eyes met Katie's. There was no apology in them, no shame. There was only a flicker of something that looked like pity mingled with victory. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Chloe said, her voice a low, smoky purr. "Adrian has told me so much about you." The rest of the evening was a masterclass in psychological torture. Adrian seated Chloe directly across from Katie at the long dining table. He directed his attention to her laughing at her jokes, hanging on her every word about the volatile art market. Chloe, for her part, played the role of the fascinating, brilliant artist to perfection, captivating the investors, and most of all, the host. Katie felt invisible, a piece of decorative furniture. The final straw came during dessert. One of the investors, a silver-haired man named Mr. Harrington, turned to Chloe. "Your latest installation is genius, Ms. Dubois. Adrian was telling me the inspiration came from a rather passionate, personal experience." Chloe smiled coyly, her eyes darting to Adrian. "Inspiration is everywhere. Sometimes it finds you when you least expect it." The implication was thick and suffocating. Katie felt the blood drain from her face. She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the marble floor. "If you'll excuse me," she said, her voice tight. "I'm not feeling well." She fled to the sanctuary of her bedroom, but there was no escape. Minutes later, Adrian stormed in his face, a mask of cold fury. "What the hell was that?" he seethed. "You embarrassed me. You were rude to my guest." "Your guest, your mistress, you mean?" Katie shot back, her control finally snapping. "In our home, how could you? She is my business partner," he roared. "And thanks to your little stunt, you may have just cost me a very important relationship. Harrington was spooked by your attitude. I don't care about your deal or your Mr. Harrington." "Well, you should," Adrian snarled, grabbing her arm. His grip was like iron. "Because my business pays for this house, for your clothes, for the ridiculous French wallpaper in that nursery. It pays for everything." He let go of her abruptly, and she stumbled back. His eyes were devoid of any warmth, any love. They were the eyes of a CEO assessing a liability. "You will fix this," he said, his voice dropping to a chillingly quiet command. "Tomorrow morning, you will call Chloe, and you will apologize for your behavior. You will tell her you were overwrought and hormonal, and you will beg for her forgiveness for making her feel unwelcome in my home." Katie stared at him aghast. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated cruelty of the demand stole her breath. "Apologize? You want me to apologize to her?" "You heard me," he said, turning to leave. He paused at the door, looking back at her, his face unreadable. "You're a Vanderbilt now, Katie. It's time you learned what that means. It means you protect the family's interests above all else, even your own petty feelings. Make the call." The door clicked shut, leaving Katie alone in the deafening silence, the monstrous, unthinkable demand hanging in the air. He wanted her to kneel to sacrifice the last shred of her dignity on the altar of his greed and his affair. He was asking his pregnant wife to apologize to his mistress. And in that moment, something inside Katie didn't just break. It hardened into steel. Katie spent the night in a guest room, the king-sized bed in her own suite, feeling vast and cold, tainted by Adrian's presence. Sleep was impossible. His ultimatum echoed in her mind. You will call Chloe, and you will apologize. Each word was a lash designed to strip her of her dignity, to break her spirit completely. Adrian didn't just want compliance. He wanted subjugation. He wanted her to be a willing participant in her own humiliation. She watched the sun rise over the Pacific, the sky turning from bruised purple to a soft, hopeful pink. For months, she had felt like she was drowning in a sea of polite smiles and unspoken truths. But Adrian's cruelty had been a miscalculation. It hadn't pushed her under. It had forced her head above water. The shock of the cold, clear air was clarifying. The love she thought she had for him, the loyalty she had clung to, had curdled into something else entirely, a cold, hard resolve. He wanted her to kneel. She would learn to fight instead. At 8:00 a.m. her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Her number is 555-212-9878. Send me a screenshot of the call log when you're done. It was so transactional, so devoid of emotion. He was managing her like a difficult employee. Katie took a deep, steadying breath. She would make a call, but it wouldn't be to Chloe. She scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't needed in years, a relic from her life before Adrian. Maya. Her friend answered on the second ring, her voice warm and concerned. Izzy, I was so worried after you left the dinner. Are you okay? No. Katie said the simple, honest word, a profound relief. Maya, I need help. Real help. She told her everything, the photograph, the confrontation, the monstrous demand for an apology. She didn't cry. Her voice was flat, eerily calm. That absolute monster. Maya breathed her voice a mixture of fury and sympathy. Izzy, you have to leave him. Leaving is not enough, Katie replied. He'll crush me, Maya. He'll paint me as unstable, take the baby, and leave me with nothing. He told me as much. I can't just run. I have to dismantle him. The words once spoken solidified her intent. This wasn't just about escaping a bad marriage. This was about justice. What do you need? Maya asked, her voice firm. Do you remember that lawyer your aunt used, the one they called the Shark, the one who took down Senator Matheson? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Julian Croft. Izzy, he's nuclear. He doesn't just win cases, he scorches the earth. Are you sure? Adrian's already set the world on fire, Katie said. I just need someone who isn't afraid to play with matches. Can you get me his private number? An hour later, Katie was sitting in her walk-in closet. The most soundproof room in the house, staring at the number for one of the most feared divorce attorneys in the country. Before she dialed it, she had one more call to make. Adrian's call. She took another phone, one of the half-dozen she owned for various charities and boards, and set it to record. Then, with her heart pounding a steady, rhythmic drumbeat of war, she dialed Chloe Dubois. The artist answered with a sleepy, irritated, "Hello." "Chloe, it's Katie Vanderbilt." There was a short, surprised silence, followed by a low, smug chuckle. "Well, well, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Calling to apologize for your little tantrum last night." The sheer arrogance of it was breathtaking. It was exactly what Katie had been counting on. She allowed a tremor to enter her voice, playing the part of the broken hormonal wife. "Yes, I wanted to say I'm sorry for how I acted. It was inappropriate. It certainly was. Chloe purred, clearly enjoying herself. You made things very uncomfortable. Adrian was furious. I know, Katie said, her voice small. He told me. He explained that you're a very important business partner. I didn't understand. No, Chloe agreed, her voice dripping with condescension. I don't suppose you would. What Adrian and I have is on a different level. It's a meeting of minds, of ambitions. Not everyone is cut out for that world. The insult was clear. You are not his equal. I am. He said the investors were rattled. Katie continued, feeding her the line. They were, Chloe confirmed. But don't worry your pretty little head about it. I smoothed things over. I always do. I know how to handle men like that. It's an art. I see, Katie whispered. I don't want to cause any more trouble. For Adrian. For the family. Chloe laughed, a sound that was both musical and cruel. Honey, you're the mother of his child. You're the family. I'm the future. Adrian knows what he needs to build his empire, and it isn't a fragile little housewife who gets the vapors at a dinner party. Now, was there anything else? I have a busy day. No, that's all. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Don't worry, Chloe said before hanging up. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. The line went dead. Katie sat in the silent, perfumed closet, the recording of Chloe's smug confession saved on her device. It was a masterpiece of self-incrimination. She had admitted to the affair, belittled Katie, and confirmed her influence over Adrian and his business. It was ammunition. Katie took a screenshot of her call log, showing the 3-minute call to Chloe's number, and sent it to Adrian. His reply was instantaneous. Good girl. She stared at the 2 words, the patronizing praise of a master for his obedient pet. A cold smile touched her lips. He had no idea what he had just unleashed. He thought he had broken her. He had no idea he had just handed her the first weapon in her arsenal. With trembling but determined hands, she deleted the text and dialed the number Maya had sent her. A crisp, professional voice answered. Julian Croft's office. Hello, Katie said, her own voice suddenly clear and strong. My name is Katie Vanderbilt. I need to schedule a meeting with Mr. Croft immediately. Tell him it's regarding my husband, Adrian Vanderbilt. Tell him I'm ready to go to war. Julian Croft's office was the antithesis of Adrian's world. It wasn't in a gleaming downtown skyscraper, but in a discreet, ivy-covered brownstone in a historic district. There was no marble or glass, only dark wood shelves overflowing with leather-bound legal books and the faint, pleasant smell of old paper and expensive whiskey. It was a room that projected quiet intellectual lethality. Julian Croft himself was just as unassuming and just as dangerous. He was a man in his late 50s, with kind eyes, a perfectly tailored tweed jacket, and a disarming smile. He looked more like a university professor than a shark, which Katie realized was precisely what made him so effective. He listened without interruption as Katie recounted her story, his expression impassive. She played him the recording of her call with Chloe. When it finished, he nodded slowly, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. That was very well done, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Very well done indeed. You have good instincts. Instincts aren't enough, Katie said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Adrian is powerful. He's insulated. He'll bury me in legal fees and gag orders. He'll say I'm an unfit mother. Yes, he will try. Croft agreed, leaning forward. Men like your husband follow a predictable playbook. Step 1, discredit the wife. Step 2, hide the assets. Step 3, weaponize the children. Our job is to be 2 steps ahead of his playbook at all times. He stood up and walked over to a large whiteboard, previously hidden by a Japanese screen. Infidelity is messy, but in a state like California, it's not the financial windfall people think. The recording is excellent for proving emotional distress, which we will use. But our primary target, he said, uncapping a black marker, is the money. He drew a box and wrote Vanderbilt Equity inside it. Adrian's power comes from this. His reputation, his wealth, his identity are all tied up in it. We're not just going to file for divorce, Katie. We're going to prove that he has used his company, his art gallery investments, and his relationship with Ms. Dubois as instruments of fraud. We will hit him where he is strongest, which is also where he is most vulnerable. The scale of it was terrifying and exhilarating. How? We hire the best, Croft said simply. I'm bringing in a forensic investigator. Her name is Lena Petrova, ex-Mossad, now runs one of the most exclusive corporate intelligence firms in the world. She finds things people have gone to extraordinary lengths to hide. The meeting with Lena took place 2 days later in the same office. She was a stark contrast to Croft Sharp, severe, dressed in black, with piercing grey eyes that seemed to see right through you. She spoke in clipped, precise sentences. "Your husband is careless," Lena said, after listening to the briefing, her accent faintly Eastern European. "Arrogant men always are. This burner phone is a good start. The art gallery is better. Unregulated markets are a playground for men like him. I'll start there." Katie's role in the coming weeks was the hardest she would ever have to play the defeated wife. She moved back into the master suite. She was quiet, subdued, and compliant. She spoke only when spoken to. She attended his insipid charity functions on his arm, her smile vacant, her eyes downcast. She let him believe he had won, that he had successfully crushed her spirit. The performance was agonizing. Every polite nod, every feigned smile felt like a betrayal of the rage that was simmering just beneath the surface. Adrian, for his part, reveled in her submission. He became more brazen, leaving his international business phone on his nightstand, taking calls from Chloe in the next room, assuming Katie was too broken to care or notice. He was a predator who had neutralized his prey and had grown lazy, no longer bothering to hide his tracks. Meanwhile, Lena Petrova's team was a silent, invisible force moving in the background. They put a tail on Adrian and Chloe. They began dissecting the gallery's finances, cross-referencing shipping manifests with sales records. They planted a listening device in Chloe's art studio. Maya was Katie's lifeline. They met for yoga or lunch, using the outings to exchange information. In the back of a chauffeured car, Katie would pass Maya a thumb drive with photos she'd taken of documents Adrian had carelessly left on his desk. Maya would pass back a burner phone of their own with encrypted messages from Julian Croft. "Lena found something," Maya whispered during one such exchange, her eyes wide. "The investors from that dinner party. They don't exist. Not in the financial world anyway. They're proxies. The money Adrian is pouring into Chloe's gallery isn't an investment. It's being funneled out." The storm was gathering clouds massing on the horizon, unseen by the man who believed he controlled the weather. Every day that Katie played the part of the perfect broken doll, the net around Adrian Vanderbilt grew tighter. She would feel a surge of panic sometimes, a fear that he would see through her act. But then she would feel her son kick a small, steady reminder of what she was fighting for. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for a future free from the gilded cage, a future for a child who deserved to know a mother's strength, not a father's tyranny. 2 weeks into the investigation, Lena Petrova called for an urgent face-to-face meeting. This time they met in the sterile conference room of a high-end hotel, a neutral ground. The air crackled with intensity. "Your husband's scheme is bigger than we thought." Lena began sliding a thin folder across the polished table to Julian Croft. "Chloe Dubois is not the mastermind. She's a high-class honey trap, but she's taking orders." She projected an image onto the wall. It was a grainy surveillance photo of Chloe meeting a man at a quiet cafe. The man's back was mostly to the camera, but his profile was distinct. Julian Croft swore softly under his breath. "Marcus Thorne," Julian said, his voice grim. "Adrian's biggest rival. They've been at each other's throats for a decade. Thorne has been shorting Vanderbilt Equities stock for 6 months," Lena explained. "He's been using the information Chloe provides about Adrian's upcoming deals to bet against him. The affair isn't just for pleasure. It's industrial espionage, and Adrian, blinded by his own ego, has been walking him right into the vault." But the real bombshell was the financial web Lena had untangled. The art gallery is a laundry. Adrian isn't just hiding assets from a potential divorce. He's cleaning money. We don't know from where yet, but it's big and it's dirty. The investors from the dinner were Thorne's people. The whole event was a charade to justify a massive wire transfer to an offshore account owned by a shell corporation which Thorne controls. Katie felt a chill run down her spine. This had spiraled far beyond a marital dispute. This was organized crime in $1,000 suits. "The photograph," Katie said suddenly, the pieces clicking into place. "The one they sent to the house. The plaque said, 'Celebrating us, 2025. Lena nodded, a rare smile touching her lips. "We cracked it. It's not a date. It's an account number. 2025. The name of the shell corporation is Celebratus LLC. He literally sent evidence of his money laundering scheme to his own house. The arrogance is poetic. They had the scheme, but they needed irrefutable hard proof that would stand up in federal court. They needed the source of the dirty money. They needed Adrian's own words. They needed the burner phone. He keeps it in his study," Katie said, her voice barely a whisper. "The room is always locked. Biometric scanner on the door." "There's always a back door," Lena said, her gaze intense. "Think Katie. Has he ever mentioned a fail-safe and emergency override?" Katie's mind raced. She thought back to the early days of their marriage, before the secrets and the silence. They had been sitting by the grand fireplace in the main hall one night, a rare moment of quiet connection. He'd been telling her about the construction of the house, boasting about its security. "Everything has a flaw," he'd said with a smirk, swirling the brandy in his glass. "A secret. For instance, the moron who designed this fireplace left one of the bricks in the back loose. Perfect place to hide a spare key, if one were so inclined. He had been drunk and boastful, trying to impress her with his cleverness. He would never imagine she would remember, let alone use it against him." The opportunity came 2 nights later. Adrian was in New York closing a deal that Katie now knew was likely another fraudulent transaction. The staff had retired for the night. The house was silent, a sleeping giant. With her heart in her throat, Katie crept downstairs to the main hall. The dying embers in the fireplace cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. She knelt on the hearth, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. She reached deep inside the cold fireplace, her fingers searching the rough brickwork. And then she felt it, a single brick that shifted under her touch. She worked it loose, her nails scraping against the soot-covered stone. Behind it was a small, hollow space. and inside that space was a single heavy key. Her hands trembled as she walked to the study. The key slid into an almost invisible lock below the biometric panel. With a soft click, the heavy oak door swung open. The study was Adrian's inner sanctum. It smelled of leather cigar smoke and power. On the massive desk next to his laptop sat the sleek black burner phone. She grabbed it. But as she turned to leave, something else caught her eye. It was a leather-bound ledger hidden beneath a stack of financial reports. It wasn't from Vanderbilt Equity. It had no markings. On a hunch, she opened it. The pages were filled with Adrian's precise handwriting. It was a detailed record of cash deposits, names she didn't recognize, and corresponding transfers to offshore accounts. The numbers were staggering, far exceeding even his declared income. This wasn't just hiding marital assets. This was a record of his crimes. She took the phone and the ledger. Back in the safety of her closet, she photographed every single page of the ledger with the burner phone Maya had given her and sent the encrypted files to Julian and Lena. She then wiped the key clean and returned it to its hiding place behind the brick, leaving the study door locked just as she had found it. She had been a Trojan horse. Adrian had brought her into his life as a beautiful object to be displayed, a vessel to carry his heir. He had no idea that he had just let his greatest enemy into the heart of his fortress, and she was about to burn it to the ground. "We have him." Lena Petrova's voice on the encrypted call was flat, but Katie could hear the undercurrent of triumph. Lena's team of digital wizards had cracked Adrian's burner phone in less than 12 hours. It wasn't just a gold mine, it was the mother lode. "The ledger you found details the source of the dirty money," Julian Croft explained, his voice patched into the same call. "For years, Adrian has been running a consulting service for some very unsavory international clients, oligarchs, arms dealers. He helps them launder their money through the US financial system, using his company as a front. Vanderbilt Equity isn't just his company. It's his washing machine." The scope of his criminality was sickening, but it was the contents of the phone itself that struck the most personal blow. He and Chloe were prolific texters. Lena said, a rare note of distaste in her voice. They documented everything. She had sent a password-protected file to Katie. With a deep breath, Katie opened it. It was a transcript of hundreds of text messages between her husband and his mistress. Reading them felt like drinking poison. They mocked her relentlessly. They called her the Malibu princess, the gilded broodmare, the porcelain doll. They laughed about her naivete, her classical taste, her pregnancy. Chloe. Is the doll playing nesting games today? Picking out more tiny socks. Adrian. She's designing a nursery fit for a king. Bless her simple little heart. It keeps her busy. Worse than the insults were the plans. They had a detailed roadmap for what would happen after their son was born. Adrian. 6 weeks after the birth. That's the window. We'll have a psychologist on retainer. We'll document her postpartum depression, her instability. Chloe. And the prenup holds Adrian ironclad. But we won't even need it. I'll get full custody. She'll be lucky to get supervised visits once a month. The Vanderbilt name is everything. The court will see her as a gold-digging hysteric. I'll make sure of it. The words swam before Katie's eyes. The cruelty was so calculated, so absolute. He had been planning to strip her of her child, her reputation, her sanity. The baby she carried wasn't a symbol of their love. It was a pawn in his endgame. And then there was the final piece of the puzzle, the betrayal by Marcus Thorne. The texts confirmed everything Lena had suspected. Chloe Thorne is pleased. The tip about the biotech merger paid off. He's wiring the first payment to Celebratus. Adrian excellent. Keep him happy. Once we've bled him for a few more quarters, we'll expose him and get him out of my way for good. 2 birds, 1 stone. Katie's blood ran cold. Adrian wasn't just a victim of Thorne's espionage. He was a willing participant planning to double-cross his rival in the end. He was playing a 3-dimensional chess game of greed and betrayal, and he saw everyone, his wife, his mistress, his rival, as disposable pieces. Katie, Julian's voice cut through her shock. This is everything. We have racketeering money, laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy, and industrial espionage. This is no longer a divorce proceeding. This is a federal case. We hold all the cards. What do we do now? She asked, her voice shaking with a potent cocktail of rage and adrenaline. Men like Adrian only understand one thing: total annihilation. Julian said, his tone turning from lawyer to field general. We will not quietly file for divorce. We will not negotiate a settlement. We will detonate this in the most public, most devastating way imaginable. We will go to the press. The plan was audacious. They wouldn't leak to a gossip columnist. That was Adrian's territory. They would go to Susan Davies, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal, known for taking down corporate criminals. Simultaneously, Julian would file a RICO lawsuit on Katie's behalf, a civil charge typically reserved for mob bosses, which would immediately trigger investigations by the SEC and the FBI. The final piece of the puzzle, Julian said, is the narrative. Susan Davies will handle the financial crimes, but we need to control the human story. We need to show the world the man you married, and for that, we will use his own words against him. He was talking about the recording of the phone call, the call where she had been forced to apologize. When do we do this? Katie asked. Next Monday morning, Julian replied. Adrian is scheduled to give the keynote address at the Global Finance Summit at 9:00 a.m. He'll be standing on a stage in front of the whole world when his empire collapses around him. The week passed in a haze of terrifying anticipation. Katie continued her performance, the dutiful, silent wife. On Sunday night, Adrian packed his suitcase for the conference in New York. You'll watch me on TV tomorrow, won't you? He said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. It's my biggest speech of the year. Of course, Adrian, she said, her voice a perfect, soft murmur. I wouldn't miss it for the world. He smiled, satisfied, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. The touch of his lips on her skin made her want to recoil, but she remained perfectly still. It was the last time he would ever touch her. As he walked out the door, she placed a hand on her belly. The unraveling was about to begin. Monday morning. The sun streamed into the Malibu mansion, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, triumphant sparks. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the light didn't feel like an interrogation lamp exposing her flaws. It felt like a promise, a clean slate. Katie sat on the edge of a vast white sofa in the cavernous living room. A mug of chamomile tea cradled in her hands. Its warmth, a small anchor in the storm she knew was about to break. The television was on, tuned to a 24-hour business news channel. On the screen, a polished graphic read, Global Finance Summit Live Coverage from New York. She was a general in her war room watching the battlefield from afar. At precisely 8:00 a.m. Eastern Time, as if a switch had been thrown, the world changed. Susan Davies's article went live on the Wall Street Journal homepage. The headline was a digital bombshell designed for maximum impact: Vanderbilt's web. How a titan of finance used his empire for fraud, espionage, and global money laundering. It was accompanied by a stern, unsmiling photo of Adrian. 1 minute later, at 8:01 a.m., Julian Croft's office electronically filed the 200-page RICO lawsuit with the federal court. It was a declaration of war, now a public record. At 8:05 a.m., Croft, flanked by a stone-faced Lena Petrova, stepped up to a podium in front of a frantic bank of news cameras. He had called a press conference for an announcement regarding a prominent financial figure, and the mystery had drawn every major news outlet. The mystique of the reclusive shark had guaranteed a full house. "Good morning," he began, his voice calm and authoritative, cutting through the chatter. "My name is Julian Croft. I represent Katie Vanderbilt, the wife of Adrian Vanderbilt." A palpable shockwave rippled through the crowd. This wasn't about a corporate merger. This was personal. This was salacious. This was a story. For months, Croft continued, his gaze sweeping over the reporters. My client has been the victim of a campaign of extreme emotional cruelty and psychological abuse at the hands of her husband. But this is not merely a domestic issue, as men of Mr. Vanderbilt's power often hope it will be. We have uncovered a vast criminal conspiracy helmed by Mr. Vanderbilt, one that uses his company, his marriage, and his public reputation as a shield. He laid it all out: the money laundering for foreign oligarchs, the shell corporations with names that were a private joke, the brazen industrial espionage in collusion with his supposed arch-rival Marcus Thorne. He provided account numbers, offshore jurisdictions, names and dates. The reporters scribbled furiously, fingers flying across keyboards, the sound like a swarm of insects. Mr. Vanderbilt's financial crimes are extensive, Croft said, his voice dropping slightly, drawing the room into a conspiratorial hush. But to understand the character of the man, you need to understand his cruelty on a personal level. Several weeks ago, after my client discovered his long-standing affair with an artist named Chloe Dubois, Mr. Vanderbilt forced his 6 months pregnant wife to do something unconscionable. He forced her to call his mistress and apologize for being upset. A collective gasp, sharp and audible, went through the press corps. It was the detail that made the story unforgettable. The human anchor in a sea of financial jargon. "We have a recording of that call," Croft said, nodding to an aide who placed a small, powerful speaker on the podium. He held it up to the microphone. Katie's trembling, apologetic voice filled the air, the voice of a woman she no longer was. It was followed by the lazy, smug, arrogant purr of Chloe Dubois. "What Adrian and I have is on a different level. A meeting of minds. I'm the future. Don't worry your pretty little head about it." The recording was devastatingly effective. It painted a picture of such profound arrogance and casual cruelty that no one could fail to be moved. It gave a human face, a villainous sneer to the complex financial crimes. Meanwhile, on the business channel, the anchors were just introducing Adrian. He walked onto the stage in New York to thunderous applause, the conquering hero of capital. He radiated confidence, flashing a perfectly white smile at the adoring crowd. He smoothed his $1,000 suit, adjusted the microphone, and prepared to speak. Then chaos erupted. The detonation had begun. An aide, his face pale with panic, rushed onto the stage and whispered frantically in his ear. Adrian's confident smirk faltered, replaced by confusion, then disbelief, then a wave of pure, ashen horror. He stared out at the audience, his mouth slightly agape as a sea of phones began to buzz and glow throughout the auditorium. The news had broken. The hive had been alerted. The business channel's coverage cut away from the summit abruptly. A new stark red graphic flashed on the screen. Breaking news. Adrian Vanderbilt accused of massive fraud. RICO lawsuit filed. And then his face was everywhere. Court TV immediately launched a live special, The Vanderbilt Betrayal, with a panel of legal experts already dissecting the lawsuit with glee. His corporate headshot was plastered next to screenshots of the Wall Street Journal article, and most damningly a photo of him with Chloe from the gallery. News helicopters were suddenly hovering over his New York hotel, his Malibu home, and the glass and steel tower of Vanderbilt Equity. In his office tower, his board of directors, men who had idolized him hours before, convened an emergency meeting to invoke the moral turpitude clause in his contract. In another part of the city, FBI agents were securing a warrant. At her gallery, a frantic Chloe Dubois was trying to book a one-way flight to Bali. But it was too late. Two plainclothes detectives looking deeply unimpressed with her avant-garde sculptures were already walking through her door. Katie watched it all unfold, a remote and silent observer to the demolition of her old life. She saw live footage of Adrian being hustled off the stage by security, his face a mask of incandescent fury and disbelief, shouting at his own people. She saw Marcus Thorne's company logo flashing on the screen as his role as a co-conspirator was revealed. The biter had been bit. The gilded cage had not just been opened, it had been vaporized in a fireball of his own making. The doorbell rang a gentle chime in the quiet house. It was Maya holding a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne, her face beaming. She came and sat beside Katie, wordlessly wrapping an arm around her. They watched together as the news channels played the clip of Julian Croft's press conference again and again. They watched as Adrian's face, once a symbol of untouchable power and masculine arrogance, became the face of public disgrace. Katie took a sip of her tea, the warmth spreading through her. A small, genuine smile touched her lips, the first real smile in over a year. She placed a hand on her stomach, where her son gave a gentle rolling kick, as if he too could feel the seismic shift in the world. He wouldn't be born a Vanderbilt in the way Adrian had intended a prince to a corrupt king. He would not inherit a legacy of lies, secrets, and cruelty. He would inherit something far more valuable, a legacy of strength, of justice, of resilience, forged in fire by a mother who had refused to be broken. She was free, and a new day, bright and full of possibility, was dawning. And that is how a man who had everything lost it all. Adrian Vanderbilt thought his power was absolute, but he forgot the one variable. He couldn't control the strength of the woman he'd tried to crush. Katie's story is a powerful reminder that dignity is not for sale, and that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find its way to the light. His empire crumbled. His name was disgraced, and his face became a permanent fixture on court TV, a testament to his own spectacular downfall. He sneered at her maternity dress, chuckling under his breath as though she was a joke. Little did he know, within 24 hours, that same woman would hold the power to change his entire world. Would you believe that a single knock on her apartment door could turn a penniless, expectant mother into a landlord overnight? Yet here we are with an old key, an unexpected inheritance and a twist of fate that would bind two sworn enemies under one roof. Prepare yourself for a tale of wounded pride, startling secrets, and shattered illusions, because sometimes destiny doesn't simply knock, it barges in unannounced. On a drizzly afternoon in Midtown Manhattan, Sophia Kim bustled her way into a cozy cafe on East 43rd Street. She gently tugged at her loose-fitting maternity dress, a fluttering pastel blue garment that had seen better days. Sophia was 7 months pregnant, and though her savings were meager, she carried herself with quiet determination. Each day she told herself that life's storms only made her stronger. As she entered Brew and Bloom, she noticed the cafe was filled with the usual eclectic crowd of city workers taking their breaks. A few well-dressed men in dark suits perched around a high table, sipping espressos as they exchanged hushed business talk. A group of college students hovered near the back laptops, open scribbling notes in battered, spiral-bound notebooks. Sophia joined the long queue, her swollen ankles protesting against standing for too long. She discreetly shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to balance her exhaustion with politeness. That was when she spotted a sleek black wallet slipping from someone's table and landing with a thud near her feet. She crouched a bit awkwardly with her pregnant belly and lifted the wallet. The sleek leather carried an embossed monogram NT. She looked up, seeking its owner, and saw a tall, dashing man with perfectly styled brown hair and an impossibly expensive-looking suit. "Excuse me," Sophia called, stepping forward. "Is this yours?" He turned, eyes scanning her from head to toe, lingering on her maternity dress. A smirk twisted across his lips. He grabbed the wallet from her outstretched hand, barely mumbling a thank you. Instead, he cocked an eyebrow. "They still make dresses like that," he said, voice dripping with amusement. Sophia's cheeks flushed crimson. She blinked, trying to steady her breath. Did he really just throw an insult at her unprovoked? Her dress might have been outdated, but it was all she could afford after patching together rent and medical expenses. She expected an apology or at least a polite nod, but none came. Instead, he motioned to the barista, apparently impatient for his double macchiato, and turned his back as though Sophia were invisible. The men around him snickered, focusing on the discolored hem of her dress. Sophia's eyes stung with tears, but she refused to crumble in front of a man who looked like he stepped out of a Wall Street billboard. Nicholas Townsend. She caught the name stitched on his briefcase, strolled away with his coffee in one hand and phone in the other, leaving Sophia behind as the cafe line inched forward. She couldn't help but overhear him bragging to a friend on the phone. "Yes, Dad's finalizing the deal with Morgan and Finch tomorrow. Once that's done, it's practically ours. But I told him it's a worthless old building. If it were up to me, I'd tear it down." She frowned, her curiosity piqued. What building was worthless in Nicholas Townsend's eyes? And why did his words prickle at her sense of justice? She tried to shake off the moment, focusing on ordering her decaf cappuccino, but the laughter at her expense echoed in her head. If only he knew who she was, or who she might become. Later that same afternoon, Sophia trudged home under a broken umbrella that barely kept the drizzle at bay. Her studio apartment was situated in a worn-down building on East 12th Street. Tiny by Manhattan standards, it was still her refuge. The paint peeled in the hallway, and the elevator frequently broke, but it was hers at least until her lease ended. Inside her apartment, a single flick of a switch illuminated the cramped living space. The sofa doubled as her bed, and near the window a small desk served as her writing nook, where she scribbled half-finished short stories in the hope of publishing them someday. Stacks of library books lined the wall. One, ironically, was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a borrowed volume she'd hoped would inspire her to make better financial decisions. She had scarcely set her mug down when the phone rang. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number from California. A wave of concern washed over her. She rarely received calls from outside the city, and she had no family in California, at least none she was aware of. "Hello," Sophia answered. A calm, polite voice responded. "Am I speaking to Miss Sophia Kim?" "My name is Abigail Martinez, an attorney at Redwood and Bloom. I'm contacting you regarding a matter of inheritance from your late uncle, Mr. Martin Kim." Sophia's heart fluttered. Uncle Martin. She hadn't seen him since she was a teenager. He was a mysterious figure who had moved to the West Coast for reasons unknown, cutting off most contact with the family. Uncle Martin passed away. Sophia sank onto the sofa unsettled. "I wasn't aware we'd even been in touch. Your uncle left very particular instructions," Abigail continued. "He had no children, so in his will he bequeathed his property in New York to you. Our records show it's a commercial building located in Lower Manhattan." Sophia nearly dropped her phone. A commercial building. In Lower Manhattan. She must have misheard. She thought Uncle Martin had been drifting from place to place, never settling down. "This might be a mistake," Sophia stammered. "I don't have the means to." "There's no mistake," Abigail assured her. "Mr. Kim's wishes explicitly stated that the building and everything in it goes to you. I'll send the documents for your review. The property manager will reach out for further instructions. It seems your uncle trusted you to oversee it." Numb with disbelief, Sophia thanked the attorney and ended the call. Her mind whirled. She stared at her battered maternity dress, ironically, the same target of that arrogant man's mockery. She was unemployed, 7 months pregnant, and scraping by on her meager savings. Suddenly, she owned a commercial building. She couldn't sleep that night. Questions swarmed. How big was this building? Was it run down or worth anything at all? Could she possibly manage tenants? Part of her wanted to wake from what felt like a dream. Another part sensed destiny's hand at work, unraveling an entirely new path for her, one she never could have imagined a few hours ago. Morning arrived grey and overcast, reflecting the confusion clouding Sophia's mind. She received an email from Abigail Martinez containing digital copies of the will. True to her word, Uncle Martin had left Sophia all his worldly belongings, including a 4-story commercial property known as the Walton Building, located near the fringes of Lower Manhattan. A second email from the property manager, Henry Paxton, introduced him as the day-to-day contact. He requested a meeting at her convenience to hand over keys and discuss urgent matters. Sophia arranged to meet him in front of the building at noon. With a mix of fear and excitement, she donned her only decent coat, a second-hand navy trench, and took the subway downtown. The Walton Building rose before her like a relic from another era. Constructed of red brick with intricate stonework around the windows, it exuded a faint aura of old New York charm. The first floor boasted large glass windows and a sign that read, "Under renovation." On the sidewalk, a man in his late 50s, balding with a rumpled suit, waved at her. "Ms. Kim, I'm Henry. So good to finally meet you." He pressed a heavy bundle of keys into her hand. "I was surprised when Ms. Martinez told me about the inheritance. Your uncle was, well, an interesting man." Henry paused, looking at her swollen belly. "I'm sorry for your loss." Sophia offered a small smile. "Thank you. I wish I'd known him better. Can we take a look inside?" Henry led her through the wooden double doors. The ground floor was a vast, open space, with dust-laden floors, covered furniture, and half-demolished walls. The hum of a neglected heating system reverberated in the background. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, giving the space a faintly ominous feel. He explained that the building's upper floors were divided into office spaces. A couple of the floors were fully rented out, though some tenants had short-term leases. The renovation on the ground floor was supposed to transform it into a chic cafe or restaurant, except Uncle Martin fell ill and everything came to a standstill. Sophia's heart pounded. This building was not worthless. It might be old and in dire need of repair, but Henry assured her it carried historical significance. Investors had even approached Martin about partial ownership in the past, but he never sold. They ascended to the second floor, and Henry pointed out several offices with glass partitions. "We have a few tenants here. The rest is vacant, waiting for renovations." Turning a corner, Henry pointed to a door with frosted glass and Townsend and Associates etched in gold letters. A sudden chill ran down Sophia's spine. The name Townsend jolted her memory. Nicholas Townsend, the arrogant man from the cafe. She swallowed hard as Henry continued his explanation, unaware of her reaction. "You'll want to meet your tenants eventually, but Townsend and Associates is one of the main ones. They have a lease until the end of the year." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. "Nicholas Townsend." Henry nodded. "Yes, him and his father Richard Townsend. They're a real estate investment firm. Rumor has it they were hoping to buy out this building from your uncle eventually. But Mr. Kim never budged." Images of Nicholas's smug, mocking grin filled Sophia's thoughts. She relived the sting of his ridicule over her dress. She could hardly believe it. The man who laughed at her was now her tenant. Her hand clenched around the keys, the weight of her inheritance growing heavier by the second. For the remainder of the walk-through, Sophia listened intently as Henry explained plumbing issues, electrical faults, and future renovation plans. Yet her mind kept drifting back to Nicholas Townsend. She had never wanted to see him again, but fate had other ideas. The next morning, she returned to the Walton building to drop off some documents for Henry. She tried to time her visit so she wouldn't encounter Nicholas. However, as she entered the lobby, she heard raised voices reverberating from the second floor. "She can't just barge in here and change everything," a male voice thundered. Another voice tried to calm him. "Mr. Townsend, please just talk to Miss Kim." Sophia, heart pounding, climbed the old creaking steps. At the top, she found Henry pinned against a wall by Nicholas Townsend's searing glare. The difference between Nicholas's pristine suit and the dusty corridor was stark. "We had a deal with Martin." "Kim," Nicholas hissed. "Townsend and Associates was going to purchase this entire dump at a reasonable price. Now I'm hearing rumors that his heir inherited the building. Henry spotted Sophia at the landing and cleared his throat. "Mr. Townsend, let me introduce Ms. Sophia Kim. She's the new owner." Nicholas turned, face twisted in irritation. Recognition ignited in his eyes. His lips parted slightly in shock. Sophia couldn't decide if it was because she was the same woman he'd insulted, or because she was pregnant, or both. "You," he let out a mirthless laugh. "The woman from the cafe, the one with—" He gestured vaguely toward her dress, now replaced by a modest black maternity outfit. "How is this even possible?" Sophia stood straighter, ignoring the rapid hammer of her heart. "I inherited the Walton building from my Uncle Martin Kim. I'm sorry if this complicates your business plans." Nicholas scoffed. "Complicates? This building was supposed to be ours. We were in the final stages of negotiating with Martin. Did he not tell you that he was preparing to sign?" She glanced at Henry, who shrugged helplessly. "I have no records indicating a formal sale agreement." only that Mr. Kim considered offers, but never signed anything. Nicholas's gaze bore into Sophia. "You're out of your depth. Are you even aware of the building's extensive renovation requirements, its compliance issues? Let me save you the trouble. Sell it to me." A swirl of conflicting emotions seized Sophia. Selling might be the easiest escape. She could use the money to support her unborn child, but something about Nicholas's arrogant tone stiffened her resolve. He thought her powerless and naive, someone easily manipulated. "I'm not selling," she said calmly, surprising even herself. "At least not right now. I need time to understand my uncle's plans and the building's potential." Nicholas took a step forward, his voice low. "The building needs more than your understanding. It needs millions in repairs. Do you have millions lying around?" Sophia refused to back down. "I'll figure it out." He sized her up as though assessing a formidable opponent for the first time. A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Fine. You want to play landlord? Let's see how quickly you regret this." With that, Nicholas brushed past her and stormed down the staircase, leaving the air charged with tension. Sophia exhaled shakily, clutching the banister. Never had she felt so challenged, so determined. In a single day, she had transformed from an object of his ridicule to the one who now held the lease over his office. In the weeks that followed, Sophia immersed herself in the labyrinth of property management. With Henry's guidance and a stack of building inspection reports, she quickly realized the Walton building indeed needed substantial investment. The facade required restoration, the electrical wiring was decades out of date, and the plumbing threatened to fail on any given day. Between visits to her doctor for prenatal checkups, Sophia met with contractors, solicited quotes for repairs, and listened to tenants' grievances. She received a crash course in building codes, tenant rights, and real estate law. Her days were exhausting, but for the first time in months, she felt a sense of purpose. She was fighting for something bigger than herself, an inheritance that could secure her and her baby's future. Townsend and Associates, however, remained an unspoken threat. Sophia heard rumors that Nicholas was still pushing the idea of purchasing the building, even going so far as to hint that if she refused, he might rouse local inspectors to look more closely at code violations. The notion made her stomach churn. In the midst of this, she found unexpected allies among the building's tenants. A small marketing startup, Harper Innovations, run by a young entrepreneur named Melissa Harper, offered to help design promotional material for attracting new occupants if Sophia could lower their rent temporarily. A retired editor named Jonathan Brewster, who occupied a small office on the third floor, volunteered to help her review complicated legal documents. "Your uncle was a kind soul," Jonathan told her one afternoon, adjusting his reading glasses. "A bit reclusive, but he had a great heart. He turned down many offers to sell because he believed the building had a historical charm worth preserving." Sophia, seated across his cluttered desk, smiled faintly. "I wish I'd known him better. He never stayed in touch after moving away. Why would he leave all this to me?" Jonathan set aside the papers. "Martin once told me he saw a similar spark in you, resilience, I think he called it. He said you understood hardship and wouldn't compromise easily." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling a soft flutter from her baby. "I hope I can live up to that." Meanwhile, Nicholas was growing more impatient. Despite his father's connections, every effort to buy the building outright was met with a polite but firm refusal from Sophia. With no purchase agreement in sight, Townsend and Associates was forced to continue paying rent albeit begrudgingly. One crisp morning, Henry summoned Sophia to the building for a pressing issue. When she arrived, she found Nicholas waiting in the lobby with a man sporting an official city inspector badge. A wave of apprehension washed over her. "Nicholas, what's going on?" she asked, trying to maintain composure. Nicholas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We have a problem. The city inspector received an anonymous tip about possible structural concerns in the building. Given that it's quite old, I can't say I'm surprised." The inspector, a no-nonsense middle-aged man, cleared his throat. "I'm here to check the building's structural integrity. If we find any major issues, we might have to issue a notice requiring immediate repairs or even evacuate certain floors." Sophia's mind raced. If the building was deemed unsafe, she could lose her tenants and her only source of income. She shot Nicholas a suspicious glance, suspecting that he was behind the complaint. "Let's show him around," she said, softly, determined to cooperate. They embarked on a thorough inspection, stopping at each floor while the inspector examined beams, walls, and load-bearing structures. Tension brewed between Sophia and Nicholas with every hallway they traversed. She noticed that whenever the inspector looked uncertain, Nicholas quietly offered extra commentary about the building's age or recent mishaps. At last they ended up in the basement, dimly lit by a single bulb. It smelled of damp concrete and stale air. The inspector circled around large metal support pillars with a flashlight. Sophia held her breath, praying that the building's bones were stronger than they appeared. After an agonizing half-hour, the inspector emerged, clipboard in hand. "The structure is old, but it's not immediately compromised," he announced. "A few areas need reinforcing. I'll detail them in my report. You'll be given a timetable to address the repairs." Relief flooded Sophia. "Thank you. I'll make it a priority." Nicholas's expression remained unreadable, but Sophia sensed his frustration. His plan to corner her, if indeed it was his plan, had fallen short. As the inspector left, Nicholas leaned in his voice, laced with condescension. "Temporary reprieve. Sophia, don't let it go to your head." She glanced at him, heart pounding with both fear and defiance. Noted. That evening, her nerves frazzled Sophia headed back to her apartment, only to find a thick envelope slid under her door. Inside were aged photographs, letters, and a note from Abigail Martinez. "Dear Ms. Kim enclosed are personal items belonging to your Uncle Martin Kim that might shed more light on his life and relationship with you. He wished for you to have these. I believe they hold significance, not just for the building, but for you personally. Warm regards, Abigail Martinez." Sophia spread the contents on her tiny kitchen table. She discovered snapshots of Martin at different stages of his life, working odd jobs, traveling across the country. There was one photo in particular that caught her eye, a much younger Martin, standing in front of the Walton building, smiling broadly, the keys in his hand. Tucked behind the photographs was a letter, dated a year before he passed away. "My dear Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I've left this world. I know we never got to know each other well, but blood ties are not easily broken. I saw your potential the day you insisted on visiting me in that run-down motel when you were just 14. You gave me some of your hard-earned babysitting money because you believed I needed it. That memory has never left me. The Walton building needs someone with heart. Townsend and Associates has tried time and again to convince me to sell. I refused. These men see buildings only as profit and loss. But you, Sophia, you see life differently. I believe you'll do what's right. With gratitude." Uncle Martin, tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She gently traced the handwriting, recalling that day as a teen when she snuck away to see Uncle Martin. Her parents had disapproved labeling him the family black sheep, yet she had felt compassion for him. Now he entrusted her with the building with his legacy, an act of faith she couldn't squander. Within days, Sophia began to see progress. With the help of a small renovation loan, secured through a local credit union, sympathetic to her story, she hired a crew to fix the most pressing issues. She couldn't address everything at once, but at least she wouldn't be slapped with an eviction notice from city inspectors. Word spread of a new landlord with big dreams. A few prospective tenants showed interest in renting out the vacant spaces once repairs were complete. For Sophia, it felt like a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Then one morning, she received an unexpected visitor in the building's lobby. He was tall, silver-haired, and wore an impeccably tailored suit. He introduced himself as Richard Townsend, Nicholas's father, and the founder of Townsend & Associates. "I'd like a word with you, Miss Kim," Richard said, holding out a business card. "It seems you and my son had a tense introduction." Sophia kept her guard up, but she led him to the small makeshift office she had set up on the ground floor. Richard glanced around at the half-finished walls. He spoke with a polished courtesy that Nicholas lacked. "We were sorry to hear about Martin's passing. He was a stubborn man, but I respected him." Sophia nodded, searching his face for hidden motives. "Thank you for your condolences. My uncle didn't mention you." He offered a faint smile. "We were acquaintances in business. My firm has had its eye on this building for some time. Let me be frank. The Walton building could become the crowning jewel in a commercial redevelopment plan. I've personally invested in the surrounding neighborhood for years." He cleared his throat. "I'd like to propose a fair deal, more than fair, actually. We'll buy the Walton building from you, pay you above market value. You'll be set for life, Ms. Kim. No more dealing with contractors, code inspectors, or tenants. You can secure a wonderful future for your child." Sophia's heart thumped at the mention of her baby. She couldn't deny the temptation. A massive check would solve her financial worries, guaranteeing her child a comfortable upbringing. No more stress, no more struggling to patch holes in the building's roof. But Uncle Martin's letter flashed in her mind. He'd trusted her to keep the building from falling into the hands of those who only saw dollar signs. "Thank you for the generous offer, Mr. Townsend," she replied carefully. "But I'm not prepared to sell at this time." Richard leaned back, shoulders tense. "At least consider it. I can email you the details." "No pressure," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I only want to see you and your child thrive, and the building, if I'm being honest, demands resources you may not have." Sophia forced a polite smile. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm determined to see through my uncle's vision." He rose to leave, smoothing out his lapel. "Nicholas will be in touch then. If you change your mind, let us know. This offer won't last forever." As Richard Townsend exited, Sophia clasped her hands in her lap, shaky from the confrontation. She realized that the father was as formidable as the son, just more refined in his approach. The building was at the center of a high-stakes game, and she was the unlikely player standing against a powerhouse family. 2 weeks went by, and Sophia saw little of Nicholas, although she heard him occasionally barking orders to his staff from behind the frosted glass door. She focused on immediate repairs, patching up the roof, updating the fire alarm system, and ensuring the elevator met safety standards. She poured every cent of her small loan into these tasks. Yet progress was slow and costlier than expected. The baby's due date loomed closer, and exhaustion pressed down on her like a heavy weight. One afternoon, as she was reviewing contractor invoices, a gentle knock sounded at the ground floor office. She glanced up, expecting Henry or a tenant, but found Nicholas Townsend standing at the doorway, one hand in his pocket. "Busy?" he asked with an almost cordial tone. Suspicion flickered in Sophia's eyes. "Always." "What can I do for you, Mr. Townsend?" He entered, glancing around at the clutter of papers and renovation blueprints. "This is cozy," he muttered, less sarcastic than she anticipated. She set aside her work. "Spit it out, Nicholas. I'm sure you didn't come here to compliment my office decor." He chuckled wryly, shifting his weight. "You're direct. I suppose I deserve that. I wanted to discuss the building, specifically your finances. If you're strapped for cash, Townsend and Associates could hypothetically invest in the renovation." Her eyebrows shot up. This was a departure from his earlier threats and condescension. "Invest." He sighed, rolling his eyes slightly. "Look, I'm not the villain you think I am. My father wants to own this building outright, but maybe there's a middle ground. If we invest, we gain partial equity. You keep majority ownership, but have the capital to fix the place properly." Despite herself, Sophia felt a glimmer of relief. It was exactly the type of solution she needed to expedite repairs without taking on crippling debt. But she also knew that sharing ownership with Nicholas would mean giving him a foothold in decision-making. And from experience, she suspected that might lead to a hostile takeover eventually. She frowned, pushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I can't just make that call without consulting Henry and maybe an attorney. Also, what's the catch?" Nicholas's gaze flicked to her pregnant belly, then back to her eyes. No catch. Just a sound business proposition. "If you manage to turn this building around and fill up the vacant floors, you'll see a steady income flow. If not, well, you'll at least have leveraged our investment instead of sinking alone." She bit her lip, torn between practicality and pride. Before she could respond, Nicholas spoke again, quieter this time. "Believe it or not, I admire your courage. Most people in your position would have bailed by now." A swirl of emotions made her head spin. She had never expected a hint of respect from him. Confusion meshed with curiosity. Was this part of a cunning plan or a genuine moment? "I'll think about it," she managed, keeping her tone neutral. He nodded, stepping backward. "Take your time. But not too long. Construction costs aren't getting cheaper." As he left, Sophia realized her hands trembled slightly. Was an alliance with Nicholas Townsend even possible? Or was she risking everything by letting the fox guard the henhouse? In the midst of these negotiations, another curveball landed in Sophia's life. One evening, after a grueling day overseeing contractors, she returned to her apartment to find a single envelope in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a brief typed note. "Sophia, I heard you inherited a building. We need to talk. Ethan." Her breath caught in her throat. Ethan Cheng, the father of her unborn child, had left her months ago, terrified by the prospect of sudden parenthood and financial instability. He'd vanished without a trace, ignoring her calls, texts, and pleas for help. And now, out of nowhere, he wanted to talk. Emotions warred within her: anger, heartbreak, curiosity. She'd come to terms with raising her baby alone, forging ahead despite the uncertain future. Did Ethan know she had come into a property and, like everyone else, suddenly see an opportunity? She wrestled with indecision. Part of her wanted to ignore him. Another part wanted answers, or at least closure. Finally, she dialed the number he had left at the bottom of the note. He answered on the first ring. "Sophia, thank God. I've been trying to reach you." She almost laughed. "Really?" "Because you did an excellent job of disappearing." He sighed. "I'm sorry. Truly. Things got complicated. My mother fell ill. I lost my job. I panicked." She rolled her eyes, not sure whether to believe him. "Now you're back." "Yes. I want to help. I heard from mutual friends that you inherited a commercial property." "That's amazing, Sophia. Think about what it means for our child. Let's meet." Her heart pounded with wary anticipation. Against her better judgment, she agreed to a short meeting at a nearby diner the following day. She spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, mind filled with swirling thoughts, the building Nicholas Townsend's investment offer, and now Ethan's sudden reappearance. It felt as though her life had collided with 1,000 diverging roads, and she was forced to choose which path to walk. The next evening, Sophia slid into a booth at Penny's Diner, an old-fashioned eatery with neon lights humming outside the window. She felt out of place among families enjoying comfort food, but she needed a neutral environment for confronting Ethan. He arrived moments later, wearing a worn coat hair slightly disheveled. He offered a small, sheepish grin. "Sophia, you look well." She gave a tight nod, arms crossed protectively over her belly. "Let's get to the point, Ethan." He lifted his hands in surrender. "Fair enough. I've been doing some thinking. Running away was wrong. I realize that now. I want to be there for our baby, especially with all these changes in your life. You've got a building. I can help manage it." A bitter laugh escaped Sophia. "Wait, you want to help manage my building? You never so much as picked up a finance book in your life. Don't you recall how you panicked over paying half our rent?" He flinched. "I'm just trying to fix things. I messed up, okay? But this is a chance for both of us to start fresh. Maybe even as a family." She studied him, searching for sincerity. She saw desperation in his eyes, an echo of the turmoil that once drove him away. If he truly wanted to be involved, was it for love or financial opportunity? Sighing, she decided to lay it out plainly. "Look, Ethan, I'm not shutting you out of our child's life if you're serious about stepping up. But my building is a different matter. It's complicated loans, renovations, and a certain real estate mogul nipping at my heels." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "A mogul? Are you in over your head? I'm good at dealing with tough guys. I can..." She held up a hand. "Stop. I don't need a knight in shining armor. I need stability. Consistency. If you want to prove yourself, start with showing up for doctor's appointments or offering emotional support. Right now, the building is my responsibility." Ethan pressed his lips together, fidgeting with a napkin. "Okay, I understand. But I just want to help." They talked for nearly an hour, hashing over old regrets and future possibilities. Sophia remained guarded. She had built an independent life since he vanished, and trusting him again wouldn't be easy. By the time they left the diner, it was clear that while Ethan wanted a second chance, Sophia wasn't sure she wanted to give it. Back at the Walton building the next day, Sophia felt the weight of her decision regarding Nicholas's investment offer. The building's repairs had already eaten up her initial loan. Future renovations would demand a larger infusion of cash, and time was running out. Several prospective tenants asked for guaranteed completion dates before signing long-term leases. Henry approached her with a stack of invoices. "We're behind schedule, Ms. Kim. If we don't pay the contractors soon, they might walk off the job." A sense of panic rose. She couldn't let the building stagnate halfway through crucial repairs. The baby was due in a couple of months, and stress threatened to overwhelm her. With her heart in her throat, she summoned Nicholas to her temporary office. He arrived promptly, wearing a charcoal suit that seemed to command the dusty space. She took a steadying breath. "I've given thought to your investment proposal. Would you mind explaining the terms in detail?" Nicholas raised an eyebrow, a slow smirk curving his lips. He pulled out a folder and laid out a plan Townsend and Associates would provide a sizable investment for the renovations in return for a 40% stake in the Walton Building's future profits. Sophia would retain 60% and full managerial control, but major decisions like selling or converting the building would require mutual agreement. Her eyes scanned the documents. The terms were surprisingly straightforward, more generous than she'd expected. Then again, 40% was not a small share, and giving Townsend and Associates a foothold might open a back door for them to seize full control eventually. Nicholas leaned forward, voice calm. "If you want complete ownership, fine. Keep turning us down. But you'll never finish these renovations in time to attract high-paying tenants. By the time you do, you'll be underwater in debt. With our help, you could have the building up and running within months." Sophia sighed, the gravity of her situation pressing on her. "What if I'm still reluctant? Is there a chance you'll push me out?" He shook his head, a flicker of something regret, maybe, crossing his expression. "Listen, I was rude at the cafe. Arrogant, yes. But this is a business proposition. If you manage this well, you'll have a stable income for you and your child. We'll have a valuable property in our portfolio. No schemes this time." The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard. She studied him, remembering how he had once laughed at her. Now he was appealing to her as a partner. Her mind spun with possibilities. Was Uncle Martin's dream worth sharing with the very people he distrusted, yet faced with unpaid invoices, code enforcement deadlines, and her baby's impending birth? Sophia felt cornered. With a trembling hand, she picked up a pen. 40% is high, she murmured, but I have no better options. Nicholas offered a short nod. "Make a counter-proposal." She licked her lips quickly, scanning potential modifications. 30%. He paused, tapping a pen against the folder. 35. She narrowed her eyes, holding her ground. 32. After a tense silence, he shrugged. Deal. So they shook hands, forging an uneasy alliance. As she slid the signed documents into an envelope, Sophia couldn't help but feel like she'd made a pact with the devil, or perhaps discovered that the devil had a soul after all. The infusion of capital from Townsend and Associates worked wonders. Contractors returned, new crews were hired, and the building underwent a rapid transformation. Scaffolding enveloped the exterior windows, were replaced, and the ground floor cafe space began to take shape. A local artisanal bakery, Sweet Hearth, signed a lease for that space, excited to tap into the building's revitalized energy. Nicholas visited daily meeting with contractors or reviewing architectural plans with Sophia. They still clashed over small details, like the choice of paint color or signage style, but found a surprising rhythm in their teamwork. Melissa Harper's startup designed a bold marketing campaign, highlighting the Walton Building's historic charm. Soon, the building's Instagram account drew interest from professionals seeking unique office spaces. Amid the hustle, Sophia balanced prenatal appointments and office calls. Her belly had grown rounder, making it harder to walk the building's halls all day. Sometimes Nicholas would offer an arm when the elevator was out of service, or discreetly bring her a chair during intense meetings. These small gestures caught her off guard, forging an unspoken camaraderie. Yet behind every successful milestone, a nagging worry simmered. Did Townsend and Associates plan to wrest control eventually? She kept a close eye on the finances, ensuring no unauthorized expenditures funneled money away. So far, Nicholas played fair. As renovations neared completion, the question arose. What about the second-floor offices currently occupied by Townsend and Associates? Nicholas had bigger ambitions. He wanted to expand his firm's footprint, occupying 2 floors entirely. This plan contradicted Sophia's vision of diversifying tenants. One late afternoon, they stood in front of a set of architectural sketches pinned to the wall. Nicholas pointed to the 2nd and 3rd floors. If we move Townsend and Associates into these floors, we can bring in new staff, ensuring long-term stability for the building's income. Sophia hesitated. You already have a suite? If you expand that significantly, we lose variety. Part of Uncle Martin's dream was to support small businesses. Nicholas frowned. Noble, but let's be practical. We'll pay top-dollar rent. The building's bottom line will skyrocket. Her stomach churned with indecision. And push out smaller tenants who rely on cheaper rents? He tossed the sketches onto a table. When has that ever been the responsibility of a landlord? You're in business to make money, not run a charity. Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. My uncle never saw it that way. He believed in giving back to the community. There's more to life than maximizing profit margins. Nicholas stared at her annoyance brewing. I thought we were partners. If you keep rejecting every viable option for growth, you'll bury yourself in overhead. She matched his glare. I'm not rejecting growth. I'm rejecting a monopoly that edges out the people who have helped me rebuild this place. Their heated words echoed in the near-empty corridor, tension thick as mortar dust. A thin line separated cooperation from conflict, and they were treading dangerously close to crossing it. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the Walton building turned uneasy. Contractors worked faster, finishing the new wiring and installing gleaming tiles in the refurbished lobby. Tenants moved in furniture, painting their offices in modern palettes. The building buzzed with anticipation for its grand reopening. Nicholas kept his distance, reviewing budgets and organizing Townsend and Associates' potential expansion without Sophia's input. Meanwhile, Ethan made sporadic appearances, trying to prove he was there for Sophia. She allowed him into a couple of her prenatal checkups, but wariness lingered between them. One morning, Henry rushed into Sophia's office. We have an issue. Nicholas placed an order for high-end elevator fixtures and is charging it to the building's budget without clearing it with you. Sophia felt her anger flare. She marched up to Townsend and Associates, ignoring the stares of staff as she walked into Nicholas's corner office. It was a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He stood at a sleek wooden desk phone pressed to his ear. Ending the call, he turned to face her. Is there a reason you're bypassing me for major decisions? She asked, voice trembling with barely contained fury. Nicholas shrugged. We needed updated fixtures. The old ones were cheap and didn't match the new lobby design. She slammed the door behind her. And you decided this alone. We're partners. Every major expense is supposed to be a joint decision. He set aside the phone, leaning forward on the desk. I was under the impression we both wanted the building to have a polished, upscale look. Or was that another pipe dream? her hands balled into fists. "Don't talk down to me. You're using your stake to force changes that primarily benefit Townsend and Associates, turning this into a high-end corporate environment, not the mixed business community Uncle Martin envisioned." Nicholas glared, color rising in his cheeks. "Your so-called community is unsustainable if the building doesn't turn a profit. Look around, Sophia. Manhattan is ruthless. If you're not making money, you're losing it." She took a shaky breath, wanting to remain calm. "I'm not opposed to improvements, but we discuss them first. From now on, you get my sign-off before any more purchases." He threw his hands in the air in exasperation. "Fine, if this is how you want it. But I'm warning you, your idealistic approach might sabotage the very thing you're trying to save." Sophia turned on her heel and marched out. Tears threatened to spill not just from anger, but from the gnawing fear that he might be right. Despite their friction, the grand reopening arrived on a crisp autumn day. A ribbon-cutting ceremony took place outside the Walton building. The fresh facade gleamed the new sign reading, "The Walton Building Established 1922, in elegant gold lettering. Sophia stood at the center of the small crowd, her maternity dress now stylish and comfortable, chosen specifically for the event. Reporters from local news outlets gathered to cover the story of a young, expectant mother inheriting and reviving an historic property. The cameras clicked as she ceremonially cut the ribbon alongside Henry, with Melissa and Jonathan standing by. Nicholas lingered on the outskirts, conversing with potential investors, while Richard Townsend was notably absent. After the ceremony, guests strolled through the newly refurbished lobby, sampling pastries from Sweet Hearth. Sophia greeted them with a polite smile, though her mind remained partially fixated on the building's future. Among the attendees was a local historian, Barbara Green, who praised the preservation of the original architectural details. "The city needs more mindful restorations like this," she told Sophia. "Martin Kim would be proud." The words moved Sophia, reinforcing her decision to honor her uncle's legacy. She might have compromised by taking Nicholas's money, but she refused to let him overshadow the building's soul. Yet no sooner had the building's doors officially reopened than trouble came knocking again. A flurry of complaints about noise parking and permit violations hit Sophia's office. Some seemed exaggerated or outright fabricated. City inspectors loomed, investigating an alleged breach of historical preservation codes. At first, Sophia assumed these were typical growing pains, but she noticed a pattern. Each complaint seemed designed to stall progress or strain her resources. Who was behind it? Late one night, she received a frantic call from Melissa Harper. "Sophia, I found something you need to see," Melissa said breathlessly. "I was searching for a marketing contact and stumbled upon an email chain on the building's shared server. It looks like someone, maybe from Townsend and Associates, has been sending anonymous tips to the city about code infractions." Sophia's blood ran cold. "Send me everything." An hour later, she skimmed through damning emails, the sender's address masked through a dummy account. The tone was unmistakably urgent, fueling complaints about minor or non-existent issues. The final line in each email read, "We urge immediate action to halt all further renovations." Rage coursed through her. Had Nicholas orchestrated this sabotage, desperate to force her hand? Or was it another player in Townsend and Associates? She recalled how from the beginning, the Townsends wanted to buy the building outright, how Nicholas threatened to bury her in code violations. Now it seemed those threats were coming to life. Sophia's world was shaken when Melissa discovered anonymous emails sent from Townsend and Associates network, urging city inspectors to stall renovations. Furious, Sophia confronted Nicholas in front of his staff, slamming printed emails on his desk. He appeared genuinely shocked. "I never authorized this," he insisted. Though his denial seemed sincere, Sophia's trust was fraying. The sabotage aligned too closely with earlier threats, and while Nicholas promised to investigate, doubt lingered. Days later, amidst mounting inspections and accusations, Sophia's stress caught up with her, sending her to the hospital with false labor pains. While recovering, Nicholas visited with flowers and an apology. One of our analysts sent the complaints, he admitted. Claimed he was following orders, but I can't prove who gave them. My father denies involvement. Sophia listened skeptical, yet moved by Nicholas's concern. He insisted he had no part in sabotaging their shared investment and pledged to find the truth. The sincerity in his eyes hinted at a man torn between loyalty and principle. For the first time, Sophia sensed that Nicholas might be more than just a corporate adversary, perhaps even an unexpected ally. But one thing was clear. Someone within Townsend and Associates still saw her as an obstacle, and the fight to preserve the Walton building was far from over. As Nicholas quietly left the hospital room, Sophia stared at the ceiling, her hand resting on her belly, bracing for the next storm. At the boardroom of Townsend and Associates, Sophia faced Richard Townsend and his assembled executives. Calm but fierce, she listened as Richard proposed buying out her majority stake in the Walton building, offering a hefty payout and a promise to handle all future management. "You'll retain 10% if you like," he said, "and your hands will be free to focus on your baby." Sophia, fueled by months of sacrifice and her uncle's legacy, refused. "I won't be bullied out of what I've fought to preserve," she said firmly. The room felt tense until Nicholas unexpectedly challenged his father. "You knew about the sabotage, didn't you?" he accused. Richard's cold warning, "Be careful whose side you're on," only solidified Nicholas's stance. Back at the Walton building, Sophia confronted Nicholas. "Where do you stand?" she asked. He looked torn, but resolute. "My father crossed the line. I'm with you now." The shift in his loyalty surprised her, but it also brought a sense of vindication. In the span of one brutal meeting and one honest conversation, the battle lines were redrawn. Sophia knew that danger still loomed, but for the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. Determined to protect her legacy, Sophia contacted attorney Abigail Martinez, who swiftly filed an injunction against Townsend and Associates. At the same time, Ethan urged Sophia to share her story publicly. With help from Melissa and journalist Reena Patel, a powerful article hit the New York Times expectant mother battles corporate giant. The public rallied behind her hashtags, trended community leaders voiced support, and tenants praised her integrity. Townsend and Associates faced backlash and falling investor confidence. Richard's tactics backfired, and for the first time, Sophia felt the tide turning in her favor. Amid mounting legal battles and media pressure, Sophia went into labor late one night. Ethan rushed her to the hospital, where she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Mia Kim. Exhausted but overjoyed, Sophia held her daughter close, overwhelmed by the journey that led to this moment. Ethan stood by, visibly moved, and even Nicholas arrived later, with a quiet congratulations and a soft gift, his presence, a comforting surprise. For a brief moment, all conflicts faded, replaced by the warmth of new life. Returning home with Mayor Sophia found her cramped apartment barely suitable for a newborn. While she adjusted to motherhood, Henry and Melissa managed the Walton building in her stead. Meanwhile, Legal pressure mounted against Townsend and Associates. Richard's sabotage scandal exploded, leading to internal turmoil. One afternoon, Nicholas arrived at Sophia's door with startling news. Richard had stepped down as CEO under the guise of health reasons. "He's out," Nicholas said simply, then added, "And I quit too. I can't work for someone who would stoop so low." Sophia was stunned. Townsend and Associates had been Nicholas's inheritance. Yet he walked away for integrity. He promised to stay involved with the Walton building, not as a corporate figure, but as someone who truly believed in its future. Cradling Mia in her arms, Sophia realized the tides had fully turned. Against all odds, she had protected both her child and her uncle's dream. The building and everyone tied to it was on the path to something far greater. Over the following weeks, tenants thrived. The building's occupancy rate soared, and Sophia officially moved into a modest but comfortable apartment on the building's top floor, her new home and headquarters. Ethan remained in Mia's life, slowly proving himself as a caring father, though romance between him and Sophia was uncertain. Nicholas visited frequently, advising on real estate matters. Their friendship, and possibly more, began to blossom, forged in the crucible of conflict. Uncle Martin's legacy lived on the old building's hallways, echoing with renewed optimism and the laughter of newborn hope. From a battered maternity dress to becoming the unexpected landlord of an entire commercial building, Sophia Kim's journey is a testament to the surprising twists life can throw our way. She navigated sabotage, battled corporate greed, and wrestled with her own uncertainties, all while preparing to welcome her daughter into the world. In the end, the once outdated Walton building found renewed vitality, much like Sophia herself, who discovered inner strength she never knew she possessed.